My party's getting bigger. I started with the Rave Neo. Got many names. Rave Neo, Trance Go. May or may not have lights. It's the same speaker. 3 kilos. Rave Mega or Soundcore Trance. 3.5 kilos. I've now got the wking T9. It sounds like a tank. The name sounds like a tank. And when you hit it, it sounds like a tank. And this is quite an interesting speaker. Not least because these are all mega good value speakers. The Rave Neo, £109 today. Soundcore Trance, £139. £115. I actually got this for £99. I got 10% off today on Amazon. It was only 5% off, but clearly there's deals around £100. For a party speaker, 80 watts, 80 watts, 50 watts. It's amazing what we're getting now. When we've moved on from the likes of JBL and the JBL Extreme prices, Soundcore came along, wking came along, Tribit came along, apart from the Tribit Stormbox Pro. And by the way, I've got a second Tribit Stormbox Pro. We will see if there was something wrong with my original Tribit Stormbox Pro or not. But what I'm trying to say is these are all good value speakers. They've all got lights, and you can have a party with them. I'm going to give you the overall specs for the wking T9. It has got a big battery. It's the biggest battery of the three, 44.4 watt hours. The other two have 36 watt hour batteries. Obviously all SBC, all Bluetooth 5. The Soundcore Trance can be connected in TWS, a stereo, and the Soundcore Rave Neo can be connected in TWS mode or Partycast, stereo pair or up to 100 speakers. You can have a pair of these, the wking T9, in proper stereo. And I'll tell you the other interesting thing about this speaker is, amongst other, there are several interesting things. One of them is, look, I had one of the world's most fake speakers because that's a fake tweeter. It's not connected. Has a sound mode, outdoor, indoor. But indoor is the outdoor mode with a little bit off at the end. And outdoor mode just goes a bit louder to make it sound like it's a different mode. But cutting the high end on the indoor mode makes it sound a bit more bass heavy. It's the same mode. So I only use outdoor mode. It's louder. It's basically the same mode. So I call that pretty much a fake speaker. But not a fake price. It's a decent old price. Obviously that's mono. We've got one woofer, one tweeter, passive radiators. But woofer, but left, right. So stand it up like that. Yes, you're going to get a mono kind of sound. But what you can do, what I thought originally I could do with the Trance, putting that on its side, getting left right. It's just like a normal speaker then, isn't it? Just a little bit bigger. You're getting proper left right stereo. Other interesting things. Well, we don't get a volume up, volume down button, but we've got the volume knob dial. So you can mess around with the dial. You can control your lights from the top. You can control the mode. So they both have auxiliary in, and it is a big deal. 3.5mm jack. And yes, we do have a 3.5mm jack on the wking T9, but we also have a flashcard TF slot. You can play music straight off the device. Can use it as standalone. Can use it as a power bank. It's got a hard reset button, which is handy. And of course your USB-C charging port. But can you have here's the other interesting thing. It's ported. That's already unusual these days, that we're used to passive radiator. Now, I'm saying we're normally getting passive radiators rather than a port because, a passive radiator basically is a port, but with, instead of a driver at the end of it that only works by air pressure. And of course a port is about tuning it for the air pressure. Sounds like bass as you come out your port. But when I looked in the specs, they're still saying it's got passive radiators. Now that would be highly unusual, but not impossible. But they are saying in the specs, I don't know if it's true, that it has passive radiators and a port. It's clearly ported, but has it got passive radiators? That would be highly unusual. Obviously, tuning a passive radiator when you've already got a port, which is you're already losing air, tuning that, not the easiest thing in the world. So not impossible, but it is probably unlikely. But if it has, it has. And how effective they are, that'd be another thing. You can also, you've got your play button, your pause button, skip forward, skip backwards. And you also get 2 EQ modes. So if I double click the play button, it's not actually connected at the moment. Normally it will go flashing blue would mean I'm in outdoor mode, and default mode would be a solid blue light. but as it's also your Bluetooth light and it's not connected, it's flashing anyway. So 2 EQ modes, but there's no app. There's no app like you get with Soundcore, which can really transform what your speaker can do. The other thing to note is because it's ported, there's no waterproof rating at all. So do not drop this in any sort of water. Once water gets in there, you've got a problem. So officially, 2 100mm woofers, which actually is smaller than a single 110mm woofer on the Rave Neo and a 133mm woofer on the Trance. But one woofer, a pair of woofers, so more surface area. So this promises a lot on paper and really interesting, obviously, with the ported design, flash card. It's got everything you really want. The 3.5mm jack, you can use it standalone, proper left-right separation if you put it on its side. So, looks interesting on paper, promises a lot. WKing, we know, have been giving us good value. The WKing D8, is a budget of boombox of choice for many. We've got the D9. The naming scheme is all a bit weird. So we've got the D9 and T9. T9 being the tank, D9 being, I don't know, what does it stand for? Another speaker anyway. But weirdly tuned, not a speaker I particularly like, but has great potential. Does go louder than the WKing D8, but the WKing D8, although not extremely, not that balanced, but more balanced than the D9, in my own honest opinion, and will depend on what firmware it's running. Now, what does the frequency response measurements promise? Let's have a look. Standard mode on the WKing T9, indoor mode. For a party speaker, that actually looks quite balanced. We've got a couple of dips, 1.5 kilohertz, another at 5 kilohertz, and a roll-off at the high end. But for a party speaker, that's quite balanced. And also a lack of huge bass for a party speaker. So balanced, but a bit of a roll-off. Rolling off from around 70 hertz. Not a lot of bass adjustment for low volumes. It's quite linear. So one of those speakers that looks as though it will improve for being played at volume because bass isn't limiting and the response is staying pretty linear. Outdoor mode, as you can see, is a big balance towards the high end. A bigger peak now, 2.5 kilohertz, and a steeper roll-off in the bass, and overall not as well balanced as indoor mode, which actually has a bias towards those mids. So, interesting. Actually, for a speaker like that, for a party speaker, quite, yes, there are a couple of dips and peaks, not as much as you get on either of those other two speakers. Quite well balanced, but maybe not quite as much in the lower bass as we would like, but surprisingly balanced. At this point, to me, an interesting speaker, and first thing I've got to do is compare indoor, outdoor. I know what the measurements say, not that much deep bass, and even less deep bass if you go to outdoor mode, and it's really a hike in towards the high end, maybe towards the shrill end. Let's have a look at a comparison between indoor and outdoor mode, both playing at the same volume.
All my niggas gonna sing along. Up the juice coating got me feeling super strong. Hanging with the scum gang, we some outlaws. We don't give a fuck, we a bunch of punks. Come up to your spot and trash it cause we so rude. Turn a house party to a mosh pit like Bonnaroo. Bang your fucking head if you down with the shit. Don't care about being normal cause we break your rules. I don't ever wanna be like you. I don't wanna do the things you do. I'm never gonna hear the words you say. And I don't ever wanna be you. Don't wanna be.
So yeah, we're losing 5 decibels off that bottom end. But we're gaining elsewhere, but making it even, quite a balance. Not the greatest sound. They call it the outdoor mode. Has the potential to go louder. If that's all that matters, then fine, that's an outdoor mode. But even outdoor, I would hazard a guess, we still want some bass. So let's have a proper test. All 3 speakers around 50% volume.
There's no easy way to say it, babe. It's gonna hurt you no matter what. I've been trying to find a way. this is all I got. Yeah, so just let me go, let me go, let me go. It ain't working no more. Let me go, let me go, let me go. Baby, just stop holding on. And take it from me. You will feel better, you will feel better. It's hard to believe. You will feel better, you will feel better, baby. There's no need for a fight. Just repeat after me when I tell you goodbye. Give it 3 weeks, you will feel better, better without me. Better without me. Please don't make this any harder, babe. Please don't make it harder than it already has to be. Wipe those tears out of your eye. We both need a different life, so don't beg me not to leave. No, just let me go, let me go, let me go. It ain't working no more. Let me go, let me go, let me go. Baby, just stop holding on and take it from me. You will feel better, you will feel better. It's hard to believe. You will feel better, you will feel better, baby. There's no need for a fight. Just repeat after me when I tell you goodbye. Give it 3 weeks, you will feel better, better without me. Better without me. Don't need a doctor just cause you lost me. Don't need to open the wine. No medication, antidepressants. All you need is time. No communication, ringing me on FaceTime. Baby, I ain't picking up. The next time you see me, you'll be completely glad that we broke up. Take it from me, you'll feel better, you'll feel better. It's hard to believe. You'll feel better, you'll feel better, baby. There's no need for a fight, just repeat after me when I tell you goodbye. Give it 3 weeks, you'll feel better, better without me.
So, if you're expecting a boombox, this is not a boombox. This is actually quite balanced, and not just balanced. There's a lot of sparkle, a lot of detail, a lot of clarity. Maybe a little bit too much, maybe a little sharp for some people. If you're on particularly bright tracks, will have a tendency to go a bit sharp. There's no app, there's no EQ there, like you're getting with Soundcore. Was a surprise to me at these volumes. The Rave Neo and custom mode actually has more bass, but what it doesn't have is the bigger sound. This is a bigger, wider sound on the wking T9. I think it's more fun. It's certainly more sparkly. Just lacks that bass weight, but that's not complete. It's not that bad. It's very hard to get that balanced. Actually, there are big dips and peaks. This is the smoothest in terms of frequency response of the 3 speakers. But yeah, there is a lower end kick, and I've not pushed it as much as you can. This is an upper bass box. If you're looking for a boom box, that's probably it. But there's no clarity, there's no sparkle, quite dull sounding really, overwhelmingly bass heavy. That's what you want. You're going to love it. But to me, I quite like it. I quite like the sound of this T9 because it's quite balanced, it's quite sparkly, it's quite detailed, quite a big sound. It's quite fun, but it just lacks deep bass. If you like your deep bass, you're not going to get it, not at 50% anyway. So let's go 75% and have a listen. Again, going to have the wking T9 against the Rave Neo and also against the Trance.
You say I make you nervous, a tragedy, I'm a beautiful disaster, a reckoning, you wonder how I got this way. You think I'm someone to be saved, someone to clean up and tame. Oh, some things never change, never change. You think I would look pretty on your arm once you cover up my bruises and battle scars, but it always ends the same. Can't bear the things I've had to face. Got you crying on your knees in pain. Oh, some things never change, never change. Oh, you'll break your back to make me feel again. Suffocate to make me breathe again. Lose your mind from endless pain. Some things never change, never change. Oh, redemption never came. I stopped asking for forgiveness, cause you should know only fools tread with the angels. Fear to go, but you keep trying to get too close. Save myself by turning into stone.
I love you just the same. It never would have worked, we collide like shooting stars. Never seeing eye to eye, but you'll always be in my heart. Like fading pictures, you are falling out of frame. We have only old memories, but I love you just the same.
So these volumes, I definitely prefer the T9 over the Rave Neo. I do like the Rave Neo, and it can sound quite beautiful, quite sweet, with the right tuning and with the right tracks. But it is a smaller sound than the wking T9. There's more sparkle, there's more clarity going on. But what it does is it gives you surprisingly deep bass, and still out kicking the deep bass. But the wking T9 can now hold its own in upper bass and mid bass. So overall, it's got more bass, but it doesn't kick the deep bass. Still, if you want deep bass, you won't get it from this speaker. And against, the Trance, we already know what we get. It's an upper bass box. It's got way more bass, hasn't it, than the T9. But that's all you get from it. And it's still, to me, if you want balance, you'll get this. But if you just want a party speaker and you just want the boom, 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 maybe the Trance will be the one for you. So, maximum volume.
I just see your city, all the up procrastinate. I've been working hard these days, homie, I assassinate. Yeah, oh, homie, I assassinate. You can check my stats, yeah, you can check my resume. I see y'all sitting down, all the up procrastinate. I've been working hard these days, homie, I assassinate. Yeah, oh, homie, I assassinate. You can check my stats, yeah, you can check my resume. Cause I come like a killer, I build it up, I'm getting iller. I'm the first time just getting realer. Yeah, that's what I do when I build my pillars. Build my castle, build my house. Yeah, I really built this town, so I gotta strike them. Yeah, I gotta rap and bring them down. Man, I really can't rep these balls, but I just gotta wing this. Man, I'm up in this ring right now, I'ma take them out. You can be the witness. I get this up on this level. I've been elevating, y'all been wrong. Being lazy, elevating, going up. Well, I've been walking up the stairs. This life is really crazy and it sure as hell ain't fair. Well, that is all okay, I'ma tell them I don't care. I just gotta keep them shuffling, I just gotta be the man that's really gonna do it, that is really gonna make it. When I feel this gravitation in my body, man, I do it for my people now, yeah, for my nation, for my soul, and for my legacy. Cause I'm on my path and I be coming for my destiny.
So the loudest is the T9 in outdoor mode, but not a pleasant listen, quite thin and shrill sounding, overly bright, but the whole point is to go a bit louder, and it does. Surprisingly for me, Rave Neo is holding its own in terms of loudness, but it's doing it via its mids and highs. It is quite thin in the bass now, but the T9 in indoor mode, slightly behind the Rave Neo, but it's holding on to plenty more bass. Overall bass minus 25, that's 7 decibels up overall bass. And even in deep bass now, it's a decibel up on the Rave Neo, which does favour deep bass, especially with my custom tuning, over mid and upper bass. And the Rave Neo managing to go a bit louder in the presence region, but overall indoor mode I think is more balanced on the T9 than the Rave Neo, especially as the indoor mode holds on to way more bass. Although the Trance in its outdoor mode does have the most bass overall, it's all bass now. It didn't have much balance at the lower volumes. It doesn't have much balance at the maximum volumes. I'm a bit surprised it didn't go louder than it did. I did recheck it. I did redo it. However, it is consistently upper bass heavy and bass prominent. When I say the most bass, actually it's the joint top bass for overall bass 30 to 200 hertz at minus 25, but it does have more deep bass than the T9 in indoor mode. 2 decibels up in mid bass and a decibel up in upper bass. But it's closer, I guess, now for the indoor mode on the T9, which does remain more balanced, and for me is the winner in the maximum volume test. So overall, a bit of surprise. The Rave Neo can really hold its own. 50 watts against the 80 watts, a smaller speaker, only got one woofer, one tweeter, as the Trance does, but of course we've got 2 tweeters, 2 woofers, surface area matters. But now, at these volumes, the T9 has got as much bass as the Trance, but it's got as much bass because it's got more mid-bass. Still upper bass and deeper bass on the Trance. But again, the one that's balanced at maximum volume is the indoor mode on the T9. Technically, the loudest is the outdoor mode, but it's not a particularly pleasant listen. But hey-ho, if it's all about going as loud as you can, you have got outdoor mode. Rave Neo does hold its own, but not in the bass. So it's doing it in the mids and the highs. That's how it's holding its own. But of the 3 on this table, I as much as I like the Rave Neo, and it can sound fantastic, this has got a bigger sound. It's more sparkly, there's more detail, it's more balanced. If we just had the deep bass that I can get on the Rave Neo at low volumes, on the T9, would have been, I don't know, could have been up there for pound world champion, perhaps. But as it is, no, but really good value speaker. It's around £100. You know, we are redefining what we can expect now from these companies. You know, we've still got the 3.5mm jack. You can play your music straight off a flash card on the speaker direct. You've got a big old battery, 44 watt hours. Proper left-right separation if you want it. You've only got to put it on its side, and it does. And it is 2 separate left-right drivers. It is reasonably well balanced. It's very sparkly. It may be a bit sharp for some, but at this price, it will go loud. It is a nice listen. I'm not saying it's overly serious, but to me, of the 3 wkings that I've got, along with the D8, the D9, and now the T9, it's certainly the most balanced. It's not the boombox that we were getting with the D8 and the D8 and the D9, and we've now got lights. So I would say overall, you know, I'd certainly recommend getting this speaker. It's certainly a decent old party speaker, but it just lacks deep bass for a true party speaker. But in terms of good value, there is a big sound, even upright like that, which would be a portrait mode, wouldn't it? Even in portrait mode, there is a big spread of sound, noticeable when you play it against these other two speakers. Indoor, it's still a decent listen. You know, that's a struggle to listen, certainly indoor, because it's so bass heavy. It's just going to get boomy indoors. You know, it's more suited to outdoors listening. And the Rave Neo, smaller speaker, it does what it does. It can certainly give a very warm, sweet, pleasant sound with the right tracks. But as I said, there is just too much of the dips and the peaks that you can't sort out in the EQ, that you're going to hear it. If you're going through lots of tracks, you're going to hear things that just don't sound quite right. This is more balanced. It's not without its issues, but it's certainly the more balanced. It's certainly well worth the money. I know you're going to say, well, how does it compare against the boom? I will do a video against the boom, but clearly we don't have the deep bass, and the boom is all about, even in the smaller package, what it can do in the bass. This won't give you a big kick deep down, but it makes up for it everywhere else. So if you were someone who enjoyed your Motion Plus, for instance, it may be a sound you quite like. You're certainly up front and forward vocals. So I have enjoyed the short time I've had with this speaker. Maybe I'll find more issues down the road. I do need to find out if it really does have passive radiators. Would be quite unusual, certainly at this budget, because it's not the easiest thing in the world, as I said, to tune a port and have passive radiators. It's normally a no-no, but it's not impossible to do. But there you go, hey ho. wking T9, certainly something that should be on your short list, certainly well worth the money. And it's not as big as I was expecting. As you can see, it's basically the same size as the Trance, slightly, tiny bit bigger, tiny bit heavier, but not that you'd notice in use. We've still got the handle. I can't really fault it at the price, to be quite honest with you. And because it's wking, and I know what the tuning was on the other speakers, surprisingly balanced. I'm pleasantly surprised with this speaker, but just doesn't go deep enough in the bass for me to say this is going to be one that replaces anything else. It does everything else pretty nicely. So, first video with the wking T9. I'm sure there's going to be more to come. Thank you for watching.